A long-delayed project returns, my friends. Results won't be perfect in the end, but we're getting there. Hey everyone, welcome to Jason Explains Things, and to the few of you who have been waiting patiently for me to get back to this project, I'm sorry, and welcome back to the 1969 Honda SL90 restoration series of videos. I said I'd be back in like 2 or 3 weeks, and a year is like 2 weeks, sort of. I mean, it's a period of time and so forth. What happened was I kept filming, I kept working on the bike, we got it back together, put back together, and the engine ran and idled really well, but I have a bad noise inside the engine.
Let me know what you think about these noises and what you think they could be.
So being the dork that I am, I got discouraged when that happened, and then I kind of got distracted and went on to other projects, and there this sat like this for a year. But we're back, we can move forward and get this bike back on the road and get me back on the road riding a motorcycle around, although it's 20 degrees outside, so I'm probably gonna wait a while for that. So my plan to get this project back on track is, first, let's check out some of the older footage that never got published, talking about rebuilding the front forks, the brakes, and several other things that are all still gonna be helpful on this build. Then while you watch that, I'll get this engine out of the bike and back on my workbench so we can tear it apart. Also, check out the description for a bunch of helpful stuff, including the first 2 parts of this series, links to tools and things like that, and chapter markers so you can jump between different topics as you're working on your own motorcycle. All right, let's do this. For starters, let's cover how to service the front forks. Anyway, let's get started taking the front forks apart. I'm gonna do one shock at a time so I don't have to disconnect the speedometer, headlight assembly, all that stuff. Really quick, I'll show you exactly how to drain your shocks. So you got this little plug right here. You loosen that up, and then over a pan, all you do is just squirt it out and So as you can see, here's the original boot, and they're just kind of cracked. There you go, now you can see how dinged up they are. Installing the new fork boots is as simple as slipping them on. Later on, I switched to different fork boots that weren't so large and bulky, and I love how these look. Okay, our owner's manual talks about how much fluid to add to your forks as you service them. So it says 11.6 to 12.2 cubic inches, and they say to use 1030 oil, which you definitely can do, but I'm gonna be using 10 weight fork oil because I want a little more stiffness in these old springs, so that's what I'm gonna use. Let's move on to tackling the front and rear brakes. But I think we can go ahead and hook up the rear brakes and put the rear wheel back on. Original brakes. I'm trying to get my brake shoes off right now. Not right now. I'll clean this off and I'll come back. So as you can see, our original brake pads have lots of life left in them. They're not contaminated with anything, so we're gonna go ahead and reuse these. Got our assembly here pretty clean. Only thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to apply some brake lubricant to the pivot points right here and right there. You don't need a lot. Boop, 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 boop. That's it. Okay. Boom. Brake shoes cleaned, lubricated, ready for the wheel. Yeah, the inside of our drum here is looking really nice. No grooves, nice and clean, so no problem using this hub again. With the back brakes done, I installed the rear wheel with a brand new tire and the rear sprocket that was still in great shape. Hooked up the rear brake rod linkage, and it's onto the front. This front wheel brake assembly is pretty unique compared to other bikes I've owned. I needed to replace this oil seal that keeps the speedometer gear grease off the brake shoes. I removed the old one and pressed the new one in evenly with a mallet. So here's our new brake shoes with the springs attached. Something is actually a little interesting. If you look at the original, the springs on this one actually are a little different, where this one hooks this way and this one the other, and vice versa on that one. But on this one, those springs are facing the same direction, so I just reversed them for safety reasons. So that's how I did that. The parts are a little different, and I want to use the new stuff, so that's what I'm doing. I installed the front wheel with the new brakes, new tire, hooked up the cables, adjusted the brake plate, and called it good. With that done, it was time to do some touch-up painting on the frame and other miscellaneous parts. I used good quality automotive paint and made sure to prep before painting. Okay, spoilers, I end up not using this cylinder, but I think I did a really nice job painting it, so here's how I tackled that. Okay, next thing we gotta do to start the assembly of the engine is we're going to need to apply a layer of paint to our cylinder that we had bored out. You're going to want to make sure that the outside of this is incredibly clean. You know, use a wire brush, use maybe some steel wool, get all of the surface rust and as much of the old paint as possible off of there. After that, I'm going to use some paint prep spray from Eastwood that is just supposed to remove all of the, you know, any contaminants that would cause issues for your new paint to stick permanently. And for that new paint, I am using some high temperature engine enamel paint from VHT. It's good stuff. Hopefully it will hold up for many, many years. Yeah, anyway, let's do it. Well, I did the best I could, trying to kind of get it from every angle. First off, you want to do all your coats that you're gonna do. You want to do them all within 1 hour to get its, you know, super awesome rating of heat resistance and chemical resistance and everything. You're going to need to cure the paint, which is you need to bake it in some sort of baking device for an hour at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm laughing because I know exactly the face my wife is making as she watched that. So I'm joking, it's a joke. I went to Walmart and I got a tiny little stove. We're gonna bake our parts in this $80, $74 little stove, so. Did you guys know that gas leaks are bad? Well, the old gas tank Petcock was pretty well trashed, plugged up, and leaking all over. I replaced it with a high-quality reproduction part, and again, spoilers for later, it functions perfectly. Okay, we're all caught up. Let's get back to that engine rebuild. Round 2. As I tore the top end apart, I was both pleased and bummed I couldn't find any problems. The timing chain and the chain tensioner look good. I determined the problem must be the valves, as my buddy Ben suggested. So I removed the cylinder head and the bored out piston. Time to go back to stock and hope for the best. Okay, disassembled. Three weeks later. I don't know how the past several years of your guys' lives have been, but there's been this thing out there, it's gonna get you. It had never really gotten hardly anyone I knew. I mean, virtually nobody. But then all of a sudden, it got everybody at the same time, including me. Woo! It's gonna get you. Well, I'm over it now. My lungs are fine, I'm fine, it's all fine, we're all fine here now.
Thank you. How are you?
Let's get back to work on this engine. I have written down some plans. I wrote these down 3 weeks ago, but now I'm gonna start acting on them. So let's check them out. Okay, let's go over our plan. First, we'll start with the head. So this is the original head, but what I did, and I think this was the cause of my issue, is when I installed these new valves, I did not lap them properly. I was just kind of a noob and I didn't know about lapping compound. I didn't know, essentially I didn't know the proper procedure, so we're definitely gonna do it correctly this time. I'll go over that whole process. And the next one, as you can kind of see here, is we're gonna switch back down to the stock cylinder. This is not the original cylinder that was in this engine, but it is an exact replacement. I'll get a close-up of this. This is looking in really good shape, but there are a couple spots that need to be cleaned up inside here. So we're gonna be honing this out to get rid of these bad spots, and also just so that we get really good compression. Okay, WD-40, our piston, and this is a piston cylinder hone in a regular power drill. This is 220 grit. So what we're gonna wanna do is lubricate this cylinder with the WD-40 and go up and down. And now I am definitely not an expert at doing this, but I've watched several videos on YouTube, kind of like you're doing, so wish us luck. Does this plan work out? Well, because some of you might be watching this for instruction, I have to admit that in the end, the engine seems to be running great, but is smoking from oil getting in the combustion chamber. As you're watching this, if you have any idea why, please let me know in the comments. I kept honing with brakes to clean out debris with WD-40 and finished with establishing a 45-degree hatch pattern by moving the drill up and down quickly while at a medium drill speed. Okay, quick change of plan. So after honing out the cylinder and getting it nice and clean inside and kind of brushing the exterior of it, kind of in prep to paint, overall, this looks really good. And I feel like if I were to paint this, it would almost look too new. So now we just need to lap our valves and reassemble the head, and then we can put this engine back together. Lapping valves requires complete disassembly of the cylinder head, including valves, valve springs, valve seats, the exhaust valve oil seal, and rocker arms. So removing a valve from a cylinder head like this is actually really easy if you have this tool, which I'm going to link to on Amazon. It's not that expensive. We have a little piece on the top here, so here we can still see and be able to get our retainer clip with a little magnet later on once we compress this. And then on this side, we can compress in at the bottom of the valve, compressing the spring, then we take the spring retainer clips out, and then we can take the valve out. Now, before we start lapping, I've read conflicting instructions on this topic. Some Honda manuals say to lap, as I'll show, and others say it will destroy your stock valves. As I said earlier, if you have any helpful tips, please leave a comment. We're going to lap one valve at a time. First, clean the valve and oil the valve stem. Evenly apply grinding compound to the edge of the valve. Stick a rubber valve grinding tool to the valve. Sidebar, this was not very easy with my valves. Apply light pressure and rotate the valve back and forth like you're making a fire in olden times. As you go, you'll feel the movement getting smoother and the noise of the grinding compound getting quieter. I did this entire process 3 times per valve. I'll link a few videos in the description about this from more experienced creators. Look at that. Okay. Once you're done, thoroughly clean the valves and cylinder head. I decided to use an ultrasonic cleaner to make sure I got everything. Blow the parts off with compressed air, and it's time to put everything back together. Assembly time. Like I admitted earlier, something ends up causing an oil burning issue, so take my info here with a grain of salt. But hey, maybe you can spot my screw up. Regardless, there is some good info incoming, including general assembly steps, setting up your ignition correctly, and more. I highly suggest following a written manual while you're doing this. Start by assembling your cylinder head with the valves, valve springs, valve seats, and retainer clip. Lubricate the valve guides and stem. Also important, don't mix up your intake and exhaust valve springs because it matters which is which. Take special note of the tiny rubber exhaust valve oil seal. I first reused the old one. Once I discovered the smoking issue, I came back, disassembled the engine, and replaced this with a new one. The old one looked worn out, but this isn't the final cause of my problem. Still, it's a good idea to replace this when you have everything apart. Lubricate and install the rocker arms. Once the cylinder head gaskets and access covers are in place, it's time for a new piston. Time to install our new piston rings on our new old stock piston. So we have, first, this is the bottom ring, which is your oil ring. And you want to look for marks on the top, and that will tell you that this is the top. So I see a little R and a little 25. So that's gonna be going down just like that. Then the top ring is chrome plated, so it's a little shinier than the second ring. Also, you'll see little marks here and here, and here and here. So that's our top ring, second ring, bottom ring. So we'll start with the bottom. Okay, new rings installed. Install the piston with an oiled retaining pin and clips. Before installing the cylinder, make sure your piston ring gaps are evenly spaced apart. Lined up gaps can cause oil burning. I think I did that right. Anyway, install the new rubber and paper gaskets, dowel pin, and then carefully install the cylinder, making sure to first oil the inside of said cylinder. With that done, install your cam chain roller. Now's a great time to test the movement of the new piston. It looks good to me. Does it look good to you? Please help me. Install the second dowel pin, corresponding gasket, cylinder head gasket, and the second cam chain gasket. Place the cam chain sprocket on the chain and push the cylinder head into place. Install the cylinder head cover and gasket. Then carefully and evenly torque the 4 nuts down to 18 foot-pounds. Here's the torquing sequence and spec for your reference. Okay, what I just did there is a little complicated, but it's not that bad to get correct. So what you want to do, and I'll show the instructions too, is this is your Woodruff key. You want that to make a perfect straight line to this dowel pin right here on your camshaft, and also there's a little mark on your sprocket right here, right there. So you just want all these to line up, and your timing will be correct, and we can keep putting this back together. With your cam chain sprocket and rocker arm shaft lined up and installed, install your generator rotor. With a few more parts and gaskets installed, now it's time to set our points and ignition timing. Okay, before we go any further, let's go ahead and set the gap on our points. So what you do with this is you rotate the generator counterclockwise here until you get the largest gap that you're gonna get on between these two spots here, and it looks like it's a little bigger. And now you want to check your gap, and it's supposed to be 0.30 millimeters. So we'll check that. That looks really, really good. Now we're going to adjust our timing. So to do that, this is your generator right here. We've probably already covered that. This is your top dead center mark right there and your firing mark right there. And you want to line up that firing mark with this mark here on the compression stroke. So this is definitely on the compression stroke because we are compressing. So we'll go right there. To do this, there's a variety of ways to do this, but probably the most inexpensive and common way to do it is to use a multimeter. You want to set it to continuity, so essentially the continuity setting, and you can check your owner's manual how to find that, is when you have continuity, because I'm an electrician, I know what that means, you'll hear a beep sound. Okay, so on this plate here, you're gonna see a mark right here and a really small faint mark right there. That's kind of a good place to start. So again, we're still on top dead center on our generator here. Now, let me show you, I'm gonna get the camera set a little closer and I'll show you how to exactly set your timing. I like to put this one up here in this little spot right there. Next one is you're gonna wanna hold these two together. This is your the lead coming out of your ignition right there. Okay, so now we're at top dead center right now, and we're gonna go to the firing point. Okay, now hopefully I'll get it close with that, but as you can kind of see, hopefully see, we're a smidge late. We want that to be lined up right, actually that's pretty much perfect. But how you would adjust it if you needed to is you can just go back and forth. You take a nice flat screwdriver and then use this little notch right here. We're gonna go ahead and tilt that back just a tiny bit. Now we're, yeah. Hopefully if you can see that, now we're a little early. Actually, this way, like. I think that's perfect. All right, so our timing is now set. We can tighten these screws and put the cover on, and we're good to go. Okay, last thing to do before we put the engine back in the bike is we have to set our valve lash, which I just did. You want to use a 0.002 inch feeler gauge and be at top dead center. And you want essentially a result like that where you have a little bit of resistance, but you can still move it. That's perfect. Button everything up, add 0.9 liters of 10W30 oil, and your engine is done. Okay, everybody, moment of truth. I'm gonna do a compression test. Hopefully the number is somewhere around 150. So 150 is perfect. So 145? I'm gonna keep putting this bike back together. What do you think about that, Topaz? Whoa! Woo! Oh, yeah! Yes! Yes! Yes, yes, yes! A few days before this video published, I disassembled the top end again, replaced the exhaust valve oil seal, and hoped it'd be fixed. It wasn't. Okay. Well, I'm not gonna lie, my friends, I am a bit bummed. Can't figure out my smoking issue. I just can't beat that smoking issue I have. It could be something wrong with the, the tolerances of the cylinder. It could be the cylinder hone that I did could be messed up. It could be the brand new rings I installed could be messed up. It could be the cylinder head, the valve seats are messed up. I don't know what it is. But I have a plan to fix it. But before we do that, I need to end this video on a happy high note. So let's fire this up and ride around my neighborhood and smoke out the place. Come on. Well, I'm really glad I went for that joyride, even though it kind of ended in failure, kind of like all of this has. A friend of mine recommended a really, really good vintage motorcycle shop about 100 miles away. So I think I'm gonna take this to that guy and let him finish it, because I'll be honest, I have put months of time, of free time into this, and I have this laundry list of other projects to get to. So look for an update video coming on this about first riding it and enjoying it, and also kind of what ended up being the problem. So look for that probably, you know, April. It's always a little bit weird putting out videos where I don't succeed at the end. I feel a little bit embarrassed doing it, but I feel still it's better to put stuff out there and have you enjoy it and learn from my mistakes rather than me just try to hide my mistakes and not put anything out. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this video. And if you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more awesome videos like it, hopefully with happier endings than this one. Anyway, until next time, everyone, God bless, and don't forget to do yourself. Yeah, I still said it. Yeah.